So my name is James Patterson. I'm the Director of Client Services for a company called The Trade Desk, and we're a demand-side platform, or a DSP. And what that basically is an advertising platform to help you buy advertising space in a programmatic way. So we're talking a bit today, I've been asked to talk about illustrating the consumer journey on Facebook, or the consumer journey from first impression to conversion, where Facebook has a role. So a little bit about the company first, about the Trade Desk. As I said, we're a multi-channel RTB platform. You know, there's a lot of acronyms in this industry, so bear with me. So like I said, we're a platform for buying advertising in real time, RTB, real-time bidding, and we work at a huge amount of scale. So we've got, when I say multi-channel, in this context we're talking about desktop and mobile and video and social. And social really is, majority of social in our context is FBX, or well, if I'm being honest, all of it is FBX. We also have a DMP, a data management platform. I told you there'll be a lot of acronyms. A data management platform with our system, and that's helps us utilize data to be able to target people more efficiently. I'll talk a bit more about that as well. That gives you access to the data marketplace, and I'm not going to go into too much of these guys, but if you want to ask about them, any of these later, you know, brand safety and viewability is a huge part of our business, assuring the efficiency and safety of the brands that we advertise for. So social buying and real-time bidding. So as I said, we're going to talk a lot about FBX and the consumer journey. We've talked a lot about FBX already today, so you guys are obviously very familiar with it already. It mainly consists of the newsfeed and the right-hand side ads. So at the top of the funnel, we're not going to be talking about this very much, but I wanted to sort of talk about it briefly, the sort of awareness and consideration side of things. I'm much more going to be talking about direct response and the bottom of the funnel, getting people to purchase or make some sort of action that you use as a KPI. But just briefly about the top of the funnel, about awareness and consideration. We've spoken today a lot about comment, like, and share. And these are things that are very important. You know, one of Facebook's mantras is that, you know, endorsement and of your peers and social interaction is hugely good for your brand, and that does build up brand awareness and build up some sort of loyalty to a brand. And we'll come back to that a bit later. It's quite hard to track this via FBX, track sort of how viral a social interaction is. There are companies like AdRoll, who presented earlier, who are able to do that. So when you're running a paid ad, for example, you can see here within a campaign that we ran in conjunction with AdRoll, 43,000 impressions or views actually resulted in 1,867 comments, likes, or shares, and that's hugely important. That's basically free marketing that your people are using to endorse your product. And I'll come back to that in a bit when talking about the purchase funnel. So like I said, we're going to talk a bit more about the bottom of the conversion funnel, the conversion and the loyalty around Facebook Exchange. So I'm going to use a really crude example of a consumer journey and also the utilization of data. So what it allows you to do is the agency has been briefed by Mercedes to say they want to target dads looking for safe sedans. This is a bit of an American presentation, like a lot of other guys have said. So a sedan's a car, which I didn't realise was. So sedan or saloon is a type of Mercedes, and so using data, you can basically, instead of just casting a net out hugely wide and saying we want to target the whole of FBX or the whole of the internet for people who are interested in Mercedes, we can say actually we want to utilize third-party data through our DMP to say we're looking for dads who are actually in market for Mercedes. And that's very easy to do, and what you do is you buy that media on a CPM, or cost per thousand, and you also buy that data on a cost per thousand as well. And it basically, instead of casting that net out hugely wide, you can target those people, saving you money and making it a lot more efficient. So this is sort of the first thing you would do when setting up a campaign. So in this example, we've said that the dad's gone onto the Top Gear website, he's viewing an episode of Top Gear, and we've placed a video there saying, a Mercedes video there. This is his first impression, as it were, through, in this case, a video. This person is now cookied, and then it gets them hooked into the brand. It's their first touch with that brand. Because he's a new dad, he's got a newborn baby, he's very interested, in this case, in safety. So he goes onto the Mercedes website after viewing that video, and views the safety pages and peruses that, and we know that that's the second part of his customer journey. He's not going to take any action. He's going to then stew on that for a little bit. And as we know, everyone's always linked onto Facebook linked onto Facebook, and within 5 minutes we can actually retarget him. So we know he's visited, he's views that video, we know he's visited Mercedes, and we can now retarget him via the right-hand side ad with a pretty targeted ad. It's a relatively generic, but it's still very targeted because we know that he's been there. We know he's in market for a Mercedes. We know he's interested. So it's a great ad to place there. A further 2 days later, we can actually, on any website you like, we can place a display ad to say something much more specific. Again, this is very US-centric, but we know he lives in Austin, Texas. So what we do is target him with an Austin, Texas dealer. What it's got, it says Mercedes-Benz of Austin, so he's already going to be drawn to that ad. We give him a way to contact them, a toll-free or a sales number, or he can even click through to the website. In this case, he doesn't even click, so this is still an impression. He's still getting awareness out there, and we still know that he's interacting with the ad and with that brand. A further 2 days later, and this is where social layering comes in, this is why I wanted to mention it. It's quite hard to track through this, through this sales cycle, but it's still hugely important. So 2 days later, he goes onto Facebook again. You can see that 2 of his friends have actually liked Mercedes on the Mercedes page. They've either commented or shared or whatever. They've interacted on the Facebook page to say that they are interested in something Mercedes are doing. Later on in that day or later on in that week, he visits the Mercedes page and actually contacts a dealer, and that's what we call a conversion. We know automotive from some of the presentations earlier works very well on Facebook. It's also very hard to buy a car via Facebook. So one of the KPIs that they use here is contact a dealer, and that's where the sort of the online journey ends. The sort of holy grail of that is actually being able to record the fact that he's bought a sedan off the back of that journey. There's still ways to do it, and it's sort of early days, but there's still ways to do that. So just to sort of summarize that consumer version, there's a huge amount of touch points which lead from the top of the funnel to the bottom of the funnel. Starting off with the use of data, so basically, like I said before, making your casting of your net much more targeted and much more efficient, all the way through to a conversion. So that's quite a crude and frankly a sort of desktop-focused conversion funnel. And there's a huge amount of more complex conversion funnels, which I think David from Kenshi was showing earlier, where search comes into play, affiliates come into play, email, and that all can be tracked through our platform. But that was really to illustrate the consumer journey. So talking about some results and some observations that we've made through a sort of intersection of clients that we work with, the people who use our desk. You can see here that people running right-hand side ads and then using newsfeed ads had a 62% increase in clicks. So it's saying that using right-hand side ads in conjunction with the newsfeed ads is hugely important, and making sure that you're getting much more interaction. You can see also the CPC actually drops as it becomes more efficient. It drops down and then starts to level out. Through again, an example of a display campaign, this is basically talking about the amount of volume and the amount of impressions that you get away for a whole prospecting and retargeting campaign. This is basically targeting the whole internet. FBX plays a massive part of that in prospecting. So when you're basically casting the net out, you're targeting people in FBX, and then you'll be able to retarget people again across the internet or within FBX. And in this case here, it's almost a quarter of the whole of your marketing budget is going toward FBX, and that's really important in terms of building up a pool of people who are interacting with your ads. You also see here the CPMs, the cost per 1,000 impressions is massively cheaper across FBX compared to the rest of the RTB, basically the rest of the internet. And that's, there's various reasons for that. It's because saturation, for example, and also because it's very efficient. And again, using the use of data, you can make these CPMs a lot cheaper. And as a result of that, FBX has a 2x lower CPA versus all other inventory in the campaign. So it's hugely efficient. It's got a huge amount of volume, and you can be very targeted. And even if you're not tracking all of the interactions, i.e. impressions and clicks, within Facebook, the social layering and influence of social and endorsement, it plays a huge part in the conversion funnel. So, I mean, a big theme of today, and I've gone through that pretty quickly, and I've got, sort of to finalise, the big part of talking about data and the utilisation of data, and we're still in a hugely early stages of really tapping into that. There's huge things around brand safety, privacy laws, and also just the utilisation of that buzzword big data. There's so much out there, it's how do you actually use it? And another thing is the way that data is bought at the moment. If you look at the right-hand side of this table, the way that we sell data, and all of our competitors and all vendors sell data is on a CPM basis. So if you imagine that you're buying some media on a 30 cents CPM, you then buy data to back up that media. So you're basically making that advertising budget much more targeted by using data. That's then 75 cents to use a segment of data. Let's say, again, a dad who's looking for a sedan. That makes the whole media buy on a CPM level at $1.05. And that makes it hugely more expensive. So there's a bit of a challenge really here in the marketplace where we're saying use data, but use it sparingly because it's really expensive. So it doesn't really add up. So one of the things we've done with something called the Data Alliance, we approached quite a lot of the third-party, or any data companies basically, about 40 of them globally, and said, why don't we price it in a different way? Why don't we price it on a media spend level, a percentage of media spend as opposed to a CPM? And in this example, exactly the same scenario, you're buying a media cost of 30 cents. We've actually said, instead of selling that data on a 75 cents CPM, why don't you buy it at 12% of the media cost? And you can do it, I'm not the best at maths, but you can see that the data cost there is 4 cents. So 12% of that 30 cents of media cost is actually 4 cents. So the actual total spend for that segment is 34 cents as opposed to $1.05. It's quite new to the market. We're only people actually do it, and it's working out hugely well. It's improving people's marketing performance. It's getting the utilization of data up, and we see that growing and growing month on month. So it's hugely important. So sort of to summarize, the utilization of data, prospecting, retargeting, and also the use of social, in this case FBX, in the consumer journey, and also tagging up other media within the consumer journey is hugely important, and that sort of brings me to the end of that really. And if anyone has any questions, please fire away.
On your pie chart, this 25% chunk is FBX. What are the other segments?
Just different creative ad types across the internet. So. So yeah, so you can't really see it, but it's basically saying the different types of creative ad types. FBX has a very specific creative ad types that you can run. The rest of it is just basically the rest of the internet. So within, let's say, this size of ad, there's thousands and hundreds of millions of websites within that creative ad type. So it's basically representing the rest of the internet. No, it's purely display advertising in this example. So it's basically to say in a pay-per-click context, there's only really one ad type that you can have. Within display, you can have different sizes. You can have video, you can have expandables, you can have rich media. It's basically describing different creative types that you can have. In paid search, there's pretty much just one. Yeah, go for it. It's all basically based on data and cookies. So when you target someone with data, you basically set up a campaign saying, I want to talk to this guy who's a new father, and there's data segments that you can actually pick out to say that that someone's a new father, and also someone who's interested in Mercedes. Then when those two bits of data intersect, you get in between that intersection dads who are looking for Mercedes. That's how you start off the campaign setup in the customer journey, and then once they first view an ad, then the cookies dropped on them. Then you basically got them sort of hooked in, and then you can retarget them off the back of that. And that's what you call building up a cookie pool.
That's an algorithm that you guys use that isn't solely based on FBX.
It's not solely based on FBX. No, we're using FBX in the consumer journey, as part of it, rather than purely within Facebook.
And then the platforms for which you would serve up ads with other browsers or in other areas would be purely delivered as a result of like cookie tracking or something.
Exactly.
And then you have another mechanism to serve up those ads on there, on those browsers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's unless people have got you know, cookie filters or people delete cookies, it's pretty much open market. Mobile is another kettle of fish altogether, and people have mentioned it again today. Cross-device is very, very hard to track. It's usually based on one device and one cookie. And there are lots of ways that people are trying to tackle that at the moment to try and track people truly across device, statistical ID and probabilistic targeting and that sort of thing. But at the moment, it's rather crude. It's rather cookie based, and it probably, and I think a lot of the presenters would probably agree that the cookie probably won't be around in 5 years' time. Any more questions?
Yes, what I'm having a hard time getting my head around in the retargeting space.
Yeah.
There's the higher cost items, like the car.
Mm-hmm.
How do you attribute like buying intent to the campaign? For low cost items, you can see the click through to the buy,
Mm-hmm.
conversion, clear.
Mm-hmm.
With the car, I'm having a hard time believing that either brand preference or the need to buy a car is influenced
Mm-hmm.
by the ad campaign. So how do you tell the client that they wouldn't have sold the Mercedes or gathered the test drive anyway without the ad?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. With a car, which is why I used a test drive as an example, because that's a lower ticket item, as it were. But buying an actual car is obviously a hugely expensive thing, and I'm not professing that the whole buying cycle is purely online. I'm not saying that people are going to not know about Mercedes, then become aware of Mercedes, and then buy a Mercedes all online. It's all TV has a huge part to play with it, press, etc., etc. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It is very hard to track higher ticket items. From the retargeting pool that you were sort of alluding to, is that it's basically saying, again, it's probabilistic. It's not saying this person is definitely interested in it. It's saying they're more than likely. So what we have in our system is things called value ratios. So the data is scored on a value ratio. So you can say that this person is much more likely than this person to buy a Mercedes. So it's not hard facts, but it's probabilistic, and it's based on a huge amount of data and algorithms and people who are a lot more intelligent than I am. Anyone else? Okay, thanks.